Here are 3 safety standards as a woman who has been traveling by herself for nearly 30 years that I would never compromise on, especially after a breakup if you're trying to get out and travel by yourself the first time. Number 1 is don't arrive someplace in the middle of the night, especially without someplace to stay. Now, I know some people are going to argue with me and say that they want to be more spontaneous, but trust me, you don't want to take the first or second day and be that spontaneous when it comes to your safety and your accommodation. There's often things that are happening in the city. There might be sporting events that you don't know about. There might be conferences and stuff like that. And often, some of these places in countries, especially like Germany, they might not even have a reception that's open after 9 p.m. So especially if you're arriving at night, just don't chance it. There's no reason to do that to yourself. Also, it's extremely stressful if you're by yourself, you have all your belongings and your valuables on you, and you don't know how that you're going to get around to the next place to find some place to stay. So always use something like booking.com or Hostel World or whatever so that you can at least have something the first and second night. This is just my tip. And then you can figure it out from there. However, when I travel by myself, I always plan things out a little bit more in terms of how I'm going to get from A to B and how I'm going to, where I'm going to stay. This is important for me, especially if I'm going to some country that I don't speak the language and it's in the middle of the night. I don't compromise on that at all anymore, okay? Number 2 is don't ever compromise your safety just to save like 20, 30 bucks. And I know that you might be thinking, okay, maybe that's a lot of money for me. Okay, then you need to make an emergency fund that you have when you travel. And I'll tell you why. Often there are situations where you might arrive late at night someplace to a train station, and maybe it's only 10 to 15 minutes or 30 minutes walk away or something like that. But the thing is that when it comes to safety, a lot of times train stations, especially in Europe, are really sketchy areas and they're not very safe. So instead of doing that, book yourself a taxi in advance from the airport or go ahead and take a taxi from the train station. I, in general, do not use Uber so much in other countries. I tend to pay a little bit more and just go with the regular taxis. Always make sure that they use the meter, by the way. But often it's possible to book these in advance. For example, for Istanbul airport, I was arriving at 11:30 at night, and I just paid 30 euros, and I had, a taxi waiting for me at the airport with a sign. I felt very safe. I went to my hostel, and it was fine. There's so many times where I know that when I'm traveling, things have happened to women, especially in places that I'm staying, because they wanted to save 20 bucks and instead of taking a taxi, they decided to walk through an area that was really sketchy. And it's just not, for me, it's not worth the risk. So that's something that I would always, always recommend. Don't travel without having some kind of an emergency little fund that you can use when you start to not feel comfortable and you want to just take a taxi, okay? And the last one, number 3, is if you go out, stay with your group, especially, I'm not going to be one of those people that tells you okay, don't drink when you're traveling abroad, because it is fun sometimes to go to bars. But for example, if you're with people from the hostel, go with your group, come back with your group. As I said, there are situations where sometimes people have gone off with groups of guys that they just met at the bar, and it's really not a good idea safety-wise. The other thing is that, I think that this should go without saying, but apparently this happens as well and people don't know about it, but it's not a good idea to use Tinder or something like that when you're abroad and just show up at somebody's house that you don't know, in a country that you don't know. Please always prioritize your own safety. There are certain things that you might feel comfortable doing in your own country, for example, but in general, when you travel, especially if you don't speak the language, you don't know the local culture or customs, and even in your own country, I just don't think that it's a good idea, and I would never want somebody to take those kinds of risks. So anyway, if you found this interesting, go ahead and give me a like and a follow, and check back, because I have 30 years of travel experience, and especially when it comes to safety, I have definitely made some mistakes over the years, and I would like to share my experience with you. So the other thing is, if you happen to be traveling after a breakup, these kind of videos are especially helpful for you if you're not somebody who's traveled by yourself before, but you're really thinking about doing it and you just want to make sure that you're safe. Keep following. Have a great day.